And in particular, today I want to describe one way of managing warehouse management features in Business Central so that companies can run their distribution in it. So it's a slightly, let's say, unusual way of using warehouse functionalities in Business Central that allow you essentially to extend the functionalities to cover some kind of like logistics and distributions. And what I'm going to show you today comes from a solution that I developed for a client a few months ago, and it worked very well. And we're not using any customization. Everything that I will show you today is standard Business Central. And again, there is also an opportunity, maybe at the end of the presentation, for us to go through what can be achieved with further customization. So if we have developers here, technical architects or solution architects online, I would love to hear from you. How would you extend this functionality? So let's get started. Hopefully you should be able to see my screen. And a bit about myself, I work as a senior Business Central consultant here in London in the UK for a company called Avanade. I have 10 years of experience in consulting, mainly supply chain and operations, 6 years in Business Central. And my love for music is shown in this picture. I play in a band with my two brothers. No records, no stadiums, just a few friends in a rehearsal room, right? So you were talking to a consultant, not a rock star, right? So what do we have today? How to turn your warehouse into a distribution center. So what we really want to achieve, we want to enable advanced warehousing in Business Central to manage and plan shipments using the company-owned vehicles, so your own fleet of trucks, ensuring not to exceed capacity, right, or payload. We looked before our colleague showing us, the trucks and tractors and how to assemble those. It's very important if you have your own fleet, you manage distribution not to exceed payload, because there are health and safety constraints, of course, about getting the right amount of goods and weight and capacity in your lorry. So we started this project, and the client's idea was, we need help. They say we need help so that our planners can maximize the usage of a company's fleet, while at the same time we want to avoid exceeding vehicles capacity, right? Maximize usage of company's fleet, because of course those are running costs. And so the more you can fit in a lorry, the more you can get, let's say, the return on your investment when you buy such an expensive vehicles, right? So we need to have essentially two main areas of concern. This is what we had, two areas of concern. So number one, we need to define how to maximize the fleet and the usage of fleet. So we decided to have default customers' orders to certain, to your own fleet. So, sorry, to your company-owned fleet, when shipped to addresses are within a certain catching area, right? So, typical example, my distribution center is in London. Therefore, everything which is London and the Southeast, here in the UK, can default to my vehicles, but everything that is Scotland, let's say 8 hours driving, should probably default to a courier, right? So distribution, catching areas, geographic area will drive the decision on the order. And then number two, we need a way to use Business Central to alert users in case a vehicle exceed payloads, but we need to do it before we create a pick, right? So this happens before the actual vehicle is assigned to the order. So how to achieve this in Business Central? The client used a mix of spreadsheets, and it was very cumbersome. So this is what we started working on, and this is as a consultant. This is always a very good way to start when you design a new solution. You start from a business workflow. So this is a typical customer workflow, right? And in a moment, I will show you how it works in Business Central. So we start from a sales order is released by sales representatives or customer service. And then the first thing we need to identify is if the shipment is within a certain catching area. Again, as I said, maybe 2 hours driving from our warehouse. Therefore, we base on postcodes and cities, for example. If the shipment is without a catching area, then we default the order to a courier. And of course, we start picking, and the order is assigned to a courier, no problem. But if the shipment is within a specific catching area that we serve with our lorries, then of course we need to assign a vehicle. Once the vehicle is assigned, though, we have an additional complexity here. Is the vehicle within capacity? Like, do we have enough capacity in the vehicle to fulfill the orders? Because you can imagine this is not a one-to-one scenario, one order, one shipment. This is a company where many orders can go to the same areas. So after the second, the third, the 50th order on the lorry, we need to understand whether we are checking capacity all the time. Because if it's within the capacity, we confirm the vehicle, we'll deliver a picking note, we start a picking note, and then it's fine. But if we are above capacity, 1 out of the 20 orders gets the vehicle out of capacity, then we need to change that order. We need to assign with a courier. And this essentially enable us to start picking, maximize the vehicle capacity without actually exceeding it. So now, how do we solve this problem in Business Central? We have 3 main areas that we need to cover. And this is really about solution design, right? A bit of a functional analysis and design workshop we do here. We have essentially 3 areas of concern. One, how do we get Business Central to identify, or at least to help the users define whether the order is in the catching area or not? Well, of course, we have the ship to postcode, right? We have the ship to postcode in the order that is defined by the customer address, therefore certain postcodes, certain areas. Now, number 2, how do we assign a vehicle in Business Central? We didn't want to create bespoke development and create a new table called vehicles or trucks. We wanted to use standard Business Central. And so we said, okay, let's find out bins, right? A vehicle can be a bin, can be a shipment bin. That at the end of the pick, we use the vehicle as a shipment bin. And so we ended the pick with the picker placing the items right in the vehicle. This also allows us to solve problem number 3. How do we check capacity? Bins in Business Central can be set up with restricted capacity. And so this is how it works. So I'm going to jump into my next slide, and then I will change the screen. So I will show you how it works in Business Central. So the first part, it's about defining catching areas as shipment agent services, right? So you might be familiar with the concept of shipping agent service in Business Central, which is a service provided by a shipping agent, right? So let me change my screen, and let me see if, excellent, you should be able to see Business Central, right? Give me a thumbs up if you see it. Business Central, very good. So in my sandbox here, I have a list of customers. And you can see if I open my customer card, I can find in my, let's say, I think it's in related in the customer, I can find the ship to addresses. There we go, ship to addresses. So one customer may have one defined ship to addresses, but if you are in distribution, yeah, you might have customers with different ship to addresses, right? Nothing stops you from defining just one ship to address to your customer. So in this case, in my sandbox, I have my Addition Corporation customer with 2 depots, let's say, and one is in London, one is in the town. The thing is with the shipping agents is that they can be defaulted to a specific ship the difference between agents and shipping services is that they can be assigned to a specific ship to address, so that you can link a delivery address, a ship to postcode or city, to a certain service. And you can see that in my sandbox, I have this postcode that it's just too far from my warehouse. Therefore, I don't bother planning with my vehicles. This goes to DHL, and with the DHL, I can have an economy 2 days shipments, right? On the other hand, if my warehouse is in London and my customer has an address in London, I will be better off using my own vehicles. And here I have my shipping agent services divided into zones. So if I look at the actual shipping agent services, you can see that against this shipping agent own logistics, I have different services. These services, again, because we're not talking about a courier, don't really need to define what kind of service I offer to my customers. For example, premium next day or economy 2 days or overnight, right? When I use my own logistics as a shipping agent, I define my own services. And in addition to having a shipment time and maybe a certain customized calendar, for example, we don't ship Sunday and Saturday, therefore the shipping time will be calculated, taking into account only working days. I can assign, essentially, I can create my own services according to zones. And this can be an area, this can be a city, it can be a specific postcode within one town. If you, for example, if you have small vehicles and you fast deliveries, right? Nothing stops me from creating, I don't know, tens of different services depending on my catching area, right? And this is actually what we've done. We created these areas and and then we linked certain areas to the addresses, right? So let me go back to my slides. And it's actually, this is what essentially you can see exactly in my sandbox. The next one, essentially you saw it just before in my sandbox, is where we assign the full shipping agent to a customer ship to address. So my customer with an address, with a depot or a shop in London, can be served by my own fleet of vans using the service Southeast, right? While the same customer with a depot in Scotland will be better served by a courier, so that even if it's more expensive, right, I don't need to waste time for the driver and the van to go up there. The good thing about a ship to address defaulting with a specific shipping agent and a shipping agent service is that these two codes are copied in the sales order. And therefore, I can use these codes like shipping agent, right, and shipping agent service code to allocate certain orders to certain catching areas and therefore to certain services. So you can see in this slide, I have 4 orders for my Upstream Corporation, 2 of which are going to be, let's say, shipped using our own logistics with a shipping agent service, SE, Southeast. These 2, again, are for the same customers. They default to DHL because, again, it's for a different depot, right? And so if I go back to Business Central now, you can see how everything is quite straightforward. I am here looking at the customer, and I create a new sales order for this customer. And let's say this customer wants the stuff delivered by the 29th, right? And we have a reference number. And then the next thing we need to do is whether you can see we deliver to their London depot. You can see how the agent service already defaults to the order. But if I change it to the other depot, you can see it changes the DHL and everything. So now if I go back to London here, and let's say I want to have my famous Athens desk, right? And let's say I want to have 2 pieces here. Now I have my order, which is already created for this customer with a default agent and agent service that I can use for planning. Okay, so let's go back to my slides and we can see the next step. So by linking a shipping agent code and a shipping agent service to a specific ship to postcode, we solve one problem, right? We find the catching area and we book the other with a courier. and we book the service with a specific courier. So the next thing is, how do we solve the next thing about vehicle capacity? Vehicle capacity can be solved with creating vehicles as shipment bins, right? So you're looking at a list of bins with a specific type shipping bay, because when you use advanced warehousing, you must set up your bins with certain types. So a bin type shipping bay is a bin type from where I can ship. So at the end of the pick run, my pickers will put the stock into this shipping bay. And the thing is that in Business Central, you can use multiple shipment bins for the same location. So in this location, London, here you can see in this slide, I have in my zone B, which is my, let's say, loading bay, I have a DHL bay, which can be the corner of your warehouse where the DHL van comes to collect goods. But I also have, you can say, two vehicles. And the thing is that I set up a maximum cubage and maximum weights on my bins, so that when I use this truck to ship the goods, Business Central will calculate the actual cubage and the actual weight, right? So this allows us to essentially, to solve the problem, because now we have the vehicles and their own capacity in Business Central standard, right? We don't need to do any customization. So the next part of it is really about creating a warehouse shipment and selecting the assigned vehicle as the shipment bin. This is something, again, not many users do, because they always believe that one location must have one shipment bin. The shipment bin is a virtual bin, that Business Central needs it. This is all true, but also only partially true. So let's go back to my sandbox, and I'll show you how it works. I want my location set up, my location London set up, and you can see with require shipment, I also have directed pick, put away and picks, which is an advanced feature. I don't have a default shipment bin, it's empty, and I want that. I do it on purpose. And I do it on purpose because when I create a warehouse shipment, I don't start from the order, right? That will define the purpose of planning, pre-planning. I create a warehouse shipment. I create a new warehouse shipment. The number series follows automatically. I want to ship for London, okay? And once I need to define my zone, of course, I'm going to use the yard as the place where I ship these goods from. And now I can select a specific bin. You can see that Business Central is only showing me the option to select 3 of the bins, not all. So I want my truck Volvo here, right? You can see that if I select the full list, I see this is my Volvo 12 tons with the cubage, right? The maximum weight. Business Central is telling me that the bin is empty. So we need to start, right, this work from scratch. Now, one thing that most users do here at this point, and this is a normal way of doing it, is to do process and start getting source documents. But the problem is I don't really see much. Of course, I can see here Long Logistics, DHL, and I can now pick and choose what to put in it. But there is a better way of doing it. In fact, the better way of doing it, and I go back to my slides for a moment, is actually, using this functionality, which is called use filters to get source documents. And I created a couple of filters here with some saved default values. So essentially what I'm doing here is something rather sophisticated. Again, this is standard Business Central, no code, no extension, no modification. I created this filter for my code Volvo Southeast, because this truck with the driver, they always go to the Southeast. And I just told Business Central to do this. When I run this filter, pull into this shipment only what is planned to be shipped with my own fleet, and only what's for Southeast, right? So essentially what I'm going to do when I go back to Business Central, the functionality is here, use filter, you can see the 2 here. So if I want to modify, I can see that for my Volvo PQ88, I have SE, but at the same time, I have my Volvo TN99 set up to Midlands. So one van always goes to that region, the other one always goes to the other region. So the good thing about using this process here is that when I run this filter here, now Business Central will calculate everything that I have planned to ship with this characteristic. So our logistics and Southeast, and line by line Business Central is calculating what I can put in the bin. And if all the orders leaving today for tomorrow in this region cannot be fit in the vehicle, Business Central tells me. They say the cubage to place, like 10 more spaces, which is one of the next lines, exceeds the available capacity. I only have left 4, right? Do you still want to use it, right? Now I have 2 options. Let me describe these 2 options again. I'm going to jump on the slides because you can see it, and then we can see it in Business Central. You can see actually, I run the same one and the same example earlier when creating my slides. So if I say yes, go ahead, the same check is anyway performed on the weight, right? So you might have a case where capacity in terms of volume, which is checked first, is okay, so you can fit the number of pallets, but 1 or 2 of the pallets are too heavy. Therefore, a second check will be done by Business Central to check if the vehicle can actually get everything that is planned for tomorrow, right? Again, I repeat myself, but this is important. This is standard Business Central, no modification, okay? So with this one, essentially, we covered the assignment and checking the vehicle capacity, right? But of course, what we have here, we have now an option, so a decision to make. If capacity is exceeded, what do we do? The interesting thing is that we have 2 options now that we can do. We can, number 1, we can cancel the job, right? Go back to the sales order and change the shipping agent, right? Which we can also do it. But there is a more sophisticated way of doing it, and this is what we decided to do with my client. Instead of having the warehouse team say, "Oh, stop, can't do it," and maybe send an email or call upstairs or say, "Guys, you know what? We can't ship to London and Southeast. It's too many. Can you please reschedule a couple of orders?" And customer service can do that, right? Which of course is always something that you can do. But we can actually use you can use Business Central to do the job for us. So what we can do is to still tell the system, yes, please go ahead, right? Please go ahead, I'm fine. And let me see what I have. And in the shipment, now what I have everything, and I am exceeding capacity. You see 10, 10, and 100 in this example. Note that the shipping agent code that I used in my filter and the shipping agent service gets stamped on the Warehouse Shipment header because I run the functionality. Okay, this you don't need to change it manually. Business Central does it for you. So now we just need to replan, and what you need to identify, because we have the cubage here and the weight, the total of each line, we can identify which one is essentially consuming my capacity of my lorry. And you can see that in this case we have this line here, which of course is consuming 100 spaces and okay, 10,000 weight. And in my vehicle, of course, I can only put so much into it. This is a simple example, but you might have 20 lines here, right? So you can just identify 2 or more lines. So what we do, we cancel the line, we delete the line, and what with the deleted line, what we can do now, I create a new warehouse shipment when the bin is a courier bay, right? And with the courier bay, the next thing they do, I need to rerun the same job, because remember that the order lines that I deleted from the shipment is still tagged with a shipping agent or logistics. So I need to rerun it and put it somewhere else, and I can change it, right? And now essentially we fixed the cycle. So let me show you how it works in Business Central, right? So I'm here, let's say, but you know what? I'm fine with it. Show me what you have. I'm fine, no problem, okay? Because line by line is checking. And now look, I have my warehouse shipment that exceeded capacity. Therefore, I cannot go ahead, but still I can see what I have here, right? So remember that my bin capacity is only for, it's a maximum coverage 14 and weight 5,500. So I can not ship, right, more than one line here because everything is 10, right? So let's do a simple example here. Let's see these 3 orders. Let's ship this one only. So I'm going to say, but you know what? I really don't want to ship these lines, okay? 10 out of 15, the van is not full. We could take 4 more pallets, but hey, that's okay, right? We're going to do what we're going to do. So we can also, of course, partially ship, right? And say 5 pallets on one load if I would, but not really ideal. So now that we have our, let's say, vehicle full, I can process. I can, I can just release this one and generate a pick node. Okay, I can start a pick node, and my van is going to be full. But what about the rest of the order? Right, the rest of the order must be planned with a courier, we said. So what we're going to do here, we're going to create a new one, our new warehouse shipment. Again, it's the same. We need to go for London warehouse. We're going to pick the yard. But hey, because I don't have availability, again, maybe I can have another lorry, right? But for this example, let's say I want to ship with DHL because my Volvo truck is ready full. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to use the same functionality. And this is where things get interesting, because remember that my orders are still with the wrong, right? With the wrong tag, because we didn't change it, okay? The good thing is that we don't need to change it because Business Central will do the job for us. So I want to rerun the functionality. And now you can see that because DHL has it's just a bay, has no constraints in terms of capacity, I didn't get an order. I mean, DHL would likely have capacity for straight, but of course, when we send an order, they will say, okay, come with 2 trucks instead of 1. So you can pick all my, 30 pallet spaces, okay? And the thing is, what I'm going to do now, because I'm shipping these orders with DHL, and I want to show you one thing, right? That the order itself, right? It's still with, right? You can see, okay, this order that we picked up here, let me show. It shows the other one, because now what I'm going to do, source document line, you can see show document, right? Some are with the old one. Some are with this, okay? With own logistics. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to have a shipping agent code here and confirm it on the head on the document and say everything that is in here goes DHL economy, because it's for my DHL pay, even though the orders originally and I still show document are still say tagged with my own logistics. So essentially, this is what we've done. And the moment I'm going to say release this one, and I want to show you if I have, let's say, capacity on this one, I can create excellent. And so now I can create a pick. So if I go here and I find my pick lines, right, I can see my card for my pick lines. Excellent. Let me see if I have availability here. I can actually register the document. There we go. So now my 3 orders with DHL are completely picked. Remember, the shipping agent is now being changed here. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to post the shipment, right? I only want to ship, I don't want to invoice. I want to show you what happened here for my order 31, 32, and 34. It's going to show everything that's perfect. And also my order that goes with my real truck here, I'm going to create a pick note. Okay. Yes, I still have capacity constraints in this one, no problem. Okay. So what I want to show you here, the pick lines. Let me see if excellent. You can see I have enough. You can see pick it from here, place it in my van, in my truck. So I'm going to register the pick. Okay, and now also my completely picked warehouse shipment can be shipped. So now something interesting happened, and let me go back to my slides because I want to show you that at this stage, right? we have confirmed the vehicle, we have confirmed the courier, and we started picking. We created one pick for the van, one order, one pick for DHL, 3 orders. So the interesting part here is what I used to see, right? Often say, wait, someone must update the order, right? The order that I shipped originally, that it was in my example, right? This is the warehouse shipment, and it's for DHL because I changed it. But originally, my order 1031, right, was my own, was with my own logistics. The good thing is that, and this is something I discovered a few months ago, I didn't know, that when you post a warehouse shipment and the agent and the agent service is on the warehouse shipment, Business Central will do it for us, so it will change it automatically. So now if we go back to Business Central and we look at the sales orders, now you can see that the 3 orders that I shipped now, that were originally for Own Logistics Southeast, because they were posted with a warehouse shipment DHL economy service, it got updated automatically by the system. So again, there is no code in my sandbox. This is complete vanilla, right? And this is essentially it's gone with the correct one. The Own Logistics here is still here because again we created one shipment partial, okay, for this one I believe. Or maybe it was the other that was let me see, completely shipped. Yeah, one of these one at 31 got changed, right? But anyway, I wanted to show you that. Let me go back to the screen. That with this solution, you don't need to cancel the order, go back and recreate and change the details. Business Central will do it for us. One thing that this solution requires, this idea, is that you need to set up volume and weight on the item in the item card. So in this example here, when you have multiple unit of measures, you also need to take care of the unit of measure. If you don't have unit of measures, the weight that is going to be calculated is the gross weight in the item card and the volume. But if you have multiple unit of measures, in my case, you can see I have pieces and a pallet. The cubage and the weight of the unit of measure, even if it's different than the weight in the item card, will actually be passed from the unit of measure. So a few interesting, again, comments here that I got from colleagues and solution architect working on this project was further improvements with development. What can we do? A couple of ideas here, and so you can probably extend the bin table to set certain shipment bins as vehicles. So vehicles can be a Boolean field, yes or no, this is a vehicle, right? And then you can link certain these vehicle bins to one or more filters, right? That use get source documents, so that you create some kind of automation, right? So you minimize risk of making mistakes. Another feedback that I got is that you can create a routine that checks the shipping agent and the service on the warehouse shipment lines, right? And update the order if the lines are different. Another thing, yeah, you can extend vehicle bins or warehouse shipment headers so that you can have a driver field can be defaulted to the vehicle and be included in the warehouse shipment header. So you have one shipment for one associated to one lorry, and one lorry gets this driver. And you can include the driver email address, so he can receive an email with the manifest. And again, you can create a report based on the posted warehouse shipment to use as a driver manifest. That includes the delivered address. Maybe you can copy and have lookup on ship to codes, phone number, right? Every address, so they can have a sort of a shipment manifest, right? I mean, something to do with development. You can, of course, extend it even further. But again, what I showed you, it's an interesting way of using or managing logistics and distribution to a certain degree of complexity without writing code. No bespoke development, everything is standard. And when the client has 24 vehicles, they deliver across the UK, and they use this methodology, and they're perfectly fine. So this was my presentation, 53 odd minutes. So again, any question?
Hello there, Alfredo. Thank you very much. So let's take a look at the questions in the chat.
Yes.
Okay, great stuff. So let's take a look. Okay, so I'm just scrolling up now just to see. There we go. So the first question is by George asking, sorry, that's the wrong person. There we go. It's Ben. So Ben says, this is a really great way of using Business Central, Alfredo, clearly well thought out and deployed to meet the requirements. Well done to all those who took part.
Thank you.
So are there any other questions? Or whilst we wait for questions, Alfredo, is there anything else you'd like to add? As we've still obviously got 20 minutes left. There is a question
20. Okay, yeah.
by Lakendra, who's asking, can we sum up the weight of the item and assign vehicle accordingly?
That's a great question. What you can do at the moment in the warehouse shipment lines, you have the weight as a field, as a total weight of the sales line that you're going to ship, which means that you can sort the lines by weight, and then what you can do, you can at the moment you can just remove, right, or in the, let's say, the lines that you don't want, and then move it to a different let's say warehouse shipment for a different lorry. At the moment, of course, there's no functionality in Business Central that can give you the option to move certain warehouse shipment lines from one warehouse shipment that is associated with one lorry to another one, right? There's no functionality that does it. Although I probably believe that with some something in Power Automate, you could probably create a Power App. Because in theory, what you can do, you have in the warehouse shipment lines, you have the warehouse shipment document number in it, which is associated with a shipment bid, which is your lorry. So no standard, it requires some manual intervention, but probably with a bit of effort using Power Up and Power Automate, you can probably achieve a good level of automation where you can just filter and say, get me the first 3 or 4 heaviest, let's say, jobs and move it automatically to, let's say, to a freight company. But yeah, good question.
Fantastic. And on the topic of Power Automate, which has been coming up a lot lately today, we will be covering Power Automate tomorrow for those who are looking to learn about how to leverage that in Business Central. So the next question by Sajid is, how do vehicle capacity, or how is vehicle capacity sorry, it's phrased. Let me phrase it in a way that sounds reasonable. So it says here, how vehicle capacity is measuring the item volume, or just based on. So obviously, Sajid, I think what Sajid is trying to say is basically how is the vehicle capacity measuring the item volume, or is it just based on the weight?
Yes, no, that's a good question, in fact. So the item volume is defined in 2 fields in Business Central. First, you can just put an item volume number in the item card, and you define it yourself. And that is going to be based on the unit of measure, volumetric unit of measure that you want to have across the entire system. Okay, in Business Central, there's no concept of volume unit of measure or weight unit of measure. It's a number. It's a number field, numeric field. So what needs to happen in a company is that the company needs to get together and say, okay, we measured weight in kilos instead of using, pounds, for example. We measure volumes in cubic meters instead of cubic feet, right? And once that is agreed, that your volume is something you define. You measure your own lorries, you know how much they can take. You measure the items, and you know how much you can take. But there is another option, though, and it's using unit of measures. If you use item unit of measures, in a unit of measure, you can define in Business Central length, width, and height. And then Business Central will automatically calculate the volume of the item. So that and you can include packaging, right? So, for example, you can have a pallet, and let's say it's a standard industrial pallet, okay, 100 by 120. And so your item, let's say A, can be stacked, let's say 1.6 meters. Then it's going to be 1.6 meter by 1 by 1.2, right? And therefore, you put this data in Business Central. Business Central will do the math for you and say, this is the calculate, this is the weight, sorry, the volume. But on top of which you can have the actual, volume of the actual physical pallet, which could be 10 centimeters, something like that. So you can have that calculated for you, but you can add to it independently your packaging. For example, do you have anything that stacks to help you stack your goods? So you add volume to the overall pallet, right? So you need to come out with a way that, including people in your organization responsible for product management, inventory management, warehouse team, procurement and purchasing, maybe. You have your master data, right? Product manager master data. You input it in Business Central. Business Central will store the data, and then when you create a shipment, Business Central will calculate the item, the quantity, the unit of measure, and will give you the total weight and total volume based on what you set up. That is going to be the base for the check that is done on the vehicle capacity, and then it will tell you if you exceed it. So in real life, for example, a lorry that can take 15 pallet spaces will have, I don't know, 25 cubic meters, for example, right? Because you have a certain gap between the top of the pallet and the ceiling of the lorry. What you want to do, you don't want to give Business Central the actual volume of your lorry, because if that is so, Business Central you will never reach capacity until you feed every single space on your lorry, which of course it never happens, right? So the capacity of your truck in your bin should be the actual capacity, so the maximum volume that you can fit, given that you have palletized goods, loose goods, whatever. It was a bit long-winded, but I hope I answered the question.
Fantastic, well done, Alfredo. So there are a few more questions coming through here. Amy's asking, sometimes weight would be minimal, but can be quite bigger in size or perhaps difficult to measure sizes. How would the solution work?
The solution works because it checks both. So if you have products that take a lot of space, but they don't weigh much, you need to remember that Business Central checks on bin capacity, therefore on your shipment bins capacity, will always be performed twice. First on the volume, and then on the weight. And this is what you want, because even if a product is very light, but it takes 2 pallet spaces, the vehicle cannot take more space than what you actually have, right, in a van. The van cannot inflate. So the first is the volume. So if then you can fit everything you need to ship in terms of volume in the van, then the next check is going to be the weight. And if the weight is minimal, then it means that you are within capacity, even with the second check. Therefore, you're good to go. Right. So this is how it's going to use what you need to do. If the volume varies, of your item, because you might have the same item with different volumes. I can't imagine what kind of product you might have, but I don't know, some kind of gas or powder or something you might have that changes volumes. Food, for example, that you might have changing volumes depending on the temperature. Then of course give it a tolerance, then you should be good to go. If you have significant variances within the volumes, you might want to use item variance, because unit measures are always by item by variant. So you have one item, variant 1 small, variant 2 large, right? I'm always simplifying, right? But you get a point. And then the variant small, we have a certain volume. The variant large will have a different volume without duplicating your items. And then, of course, the Business Central will do the calculation for you when you create a shipment for those items.
Fantastic, Alfredo. So Alina is asking, how do I get a packing list in Business Central?
Oh, good. So the packing list. The packing list is the list of items that you have included in your shipping, right? In the shipment. The packing list is essentially a report that you get out of the posted warehouse shipment. So the posted warehouse shipment is your packing list because it contains everything that you are shipping with that specific container. It can be one lorry, it can be one shipment container, right? Sea freight. And that's your packing list, which is different than your delivery note, right? Usually the delivery note is the posted sales shipment because it's one document per customer. And it might include the prices if you want to. But your packing list is really a copy of your posted warehouse shipment that includes everything that you ship in that, let's say, goods out job, so to speak, and includes the items due to measures, includes the weight, includes the volume. With a bit of personalization, you can always, add more details. But yeah, to answer the question, your packing slip, let's say, is your posted warehouse shipment.
Excellent. So Sajid is asking, is girth impacting capacity somehow based on number of item, quantity and volume? Is there any way of order orchestration of combining items from different locations and warehouses to deliver it to customers as one shipment? So there's two questions there, sorry.
Yeah, okay. So I'll answer the second. I'll answer the second question first. You cannot combine multiple shipments that are coming from different locations in Business Central because one location is a physical space, place for your inventory where goods in and goods out jobs are segregated. That's the reason why a warehouse shipment has the location in the header. So with one shipment, it's always one location. If you fulfill orders from multiple locations and it's one, let's say, goods out job, so one lorry picks up stock from different places and it delivers in one go to a customer, you might want to redesign your solution so that number one, you have one location in different zones that can be different sites, but then of course you combine stock from different zones into one shipment, one lorry, and in one goods out. Second option, if you have physical warehouses, let's say one in Manchester, one in London, you need to combine the two and one shipment. That becomes a bit more complicated, but Business Central can handle multiple locations in the lines of the order. So we have one sales order and you have different shipments, but those are individual shipments. So Business Central will create one delivery note per shipment, per location. So you need to find a way to consolidate it at the moment. It's not really straightforward. It requires a manual intervention. You might want to have transfer orders. You transfer into an in-transit location. Your truck becomes your location instead of your bin. You fulfill the orders for multiple locations, you post into a transfer, you transfer into one vehicle delivers to the customer. That is probably what I wanted to do. And sorry, I didn't quite get the first part of the question.
The first part of the question is girth impacting capacity somehow based on number of item, quantity and volume?
Sorry, I don't get the girth part.
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah. Could you rephrase the question, Sajid? It does seem a bit so girth impacting capacity, girth impacting.
I'm not sure.
Somehow based on number of. If you could rephrase that, Sajid, that'd be great. And we'll move on to the next question in the meantime. So Peter has asked the question: does posted warehouse shipment report have lot and serial numbers?
Yes. The lot and serial numbers are attached to the item tracking codes. I'm not sure whether if the default layout in Business Central, that there are different, sometimes for different repos, we have different layouts. I'm not sure if there is a standard one that includes it. But when you post a warehouse shipment, this is the thing we need to understand. Posting a warehouse shipments generates warehouse entries. Those are subledgers. It's a ledger table which is linked to the item ledger entries, but it's not the same as in the item ledger entry. So when we post a warehouse shipment, Business Central posts warehouse entries that, as a consequence, they also will post the item ledger entry. The item tracking details that are attached to reservation entries first and the item tracking later, right? The item tracking works in a very complicated manner. But anyway, when you ship through a warehouse shipment, the item tracking is linked to the warehouse item in warehouse entries, warehouse ledger, and therefore, again, if I'm not sure whether the standard report includes that, but if it doesn't, it's very easy to get the lot tracking on a posted warehouse shipment, because there is a unique correlation between item tracking and warehouse ledger entries.
Thank you. So Gulam is asking if a lot number which has a minimum number of items, will it still be assigned to an item?
A minimum number of items, a lot number. I'm not sure I came across this the scenario when a lot number must have a minimum. So that we confirm, that we can clarify. A lot number essentially is a way for you to attach a batch number, right? And maybe an expiry date. Sometimes lot numbers can have an expiry date, right? If you have, so you can ship one item out of your warehouse, the lot number is attached to that particular, always to the base unit of measure. So I'm not sure whether this concept of a minimum lot number comes from.
Thanks, Alfredo. Gulam, if you could just provide further emphasis, that would be really helpful. Whilst we jump back to Sajid, who's providing further elaboration on his question. So Sajid is referring to girth as the sum of height and width, mostly used by many logistics service providers. So what he was asking originally was, is girth impacting capacity somehow based on number of item quantity and volume? Yeah, so I'm not sure if that helps.
So let's see, maybe I can try to, so if I understand the concept, some logistics companies, they have this concept of, this is the standard volume of the item, and I use it for my, let's say, putaways, okay, warehousing. In my racking, I see the number of volumes, but when I ship those goods, I want to have an extra, like a tolerance, so that, for example, items on a shelf might be in boxes. Item loaded in a lorry may have the pallet, and therefore you have additional volume that is not just the sum of the volume of the boxes, right? And again, you need to do that in Business Central through unit of measures. And so what you want to do, you have your items stored in boxes, moved in boxes with volume calculated by length, width, and height of your boxes. Then you have a pallet unit of measure with 20 boxes on a pallet. Business Central will do the calculation of the net volume. It's your job to add the total volume of that pallet, the additional space that you might want to use. And if you do that, Business Central will include it. Will include that. If not, of course, it will not. You will need some kind of customization that includes the packaging, let's say packaging type, the packaging type used to ship those goods. There is an interesting company in the Netherlands that does that, and you can specify as an extension. You can specify something like shipment unit of measure on an item. So we ship these items on pallets, palletized, although we might sell it in boxes, and you can have additional packaging lines per unit of measure. So a unit of measure pallet will have a packaging type of, I don't know, plastic pallet, and with their own weight and volume. And that, of course, will be taken into account when you try to organize your goods out job, because Business Central will calculate the net volume of the item plus the volume of your packaging, right? That can be done through an extension. But as I said, at the moment with Business Central standard, you need to factor that one into your gross volume of the item using unit of measure. Would be my preferred solution. I hope that was the colleague wanted to ask.
Well, definitely. He's saying thank you. So Sarah's saying, okay, thank you. I understand your answer, Alfredo. Thank you for a great explanation. I have to admit, Alfredo, I'm really impressed on you taking on this subject matter, and you've handled it really, really well, addressing the nuances and complexities. I have to say, I'm a big fan of yours already, Alfredo.
Excellent, very good. Thank you. Thank you.
So there's another question from Gulam. He's asking, I am working on one task in which order will be processed, but after processing negative item quantities will be assigned, and I don't know why. So can you tell me in which cases negative item tracking lines added?
All right, negative item tracking lines. It's a very it's a dangerous territory. Okay, negative item tracking lines may be used in manufacturing where you have consumption, and so it's a negative quantity. It's consumption of components on a production order. You have a -2 on a specific line, for example, with a specific tracking. It's important to understand that a warehouse shipment, just like a warehouse receipt, is a specific type of warehouse entry, and you cannot have negative item tracking lines on a warehouse entry or type shipment. You might have a negative entry when you're doing consumption of materials and you have advanced warehousing. But a warehouse shipment essentially creates warehouse ledger entries of type movements, right? Shipments that are not of type consumption. Therefore, you should never have negative entries in a warehouse document. If you have, it's because there is some customization in your system. But trust me, I will never ever work on negative ledgers on a warehouse, on a minimum warehouse. Just to give you an idea, you cannot go a negative inventory in Business Central if you have warehousing enabled, right? There is a reason why Microsoft has disabled the negative inventory on warehouse, because warehouse ledgers do not support negative, and rightly so. If you have a warehouse management system and you allow negative inventory, good luck finding out where your stock is, right? So to answer the question of our colleague, you should never have negative item tracking lines on warehouse shipments. If that is the case, there is some kind of development done that is touching some areas of Business Central that shouldn't be involved. So you might want to look, at the developer who has developed this functionality.
So a great way to wrap up is Hani is saying, shout out to Alfredo's LinkedIn posts. Questions are asked with smart tips and usually very engaging comment section. So that's a great cue to share your LinkedIn, which I think Jennifer has actually done so. So Jennifer's kindly shared your LinkedIn.
Yes,
so everybody follow Alfredo. Everybody, we've got how many people? 130 people. Can you all follow Alfredo, please?
Great, thank you.
You're not going to miss out. And make sure you like his posts and give kudos, because he's given a great presentation today. So thank you once again, Alfredo. It was a great pleasure, great honor to host you today. And we've all benefited highly, and I really do hope that we can meet in person very soon, maybe next year, when we return back to in person.
Hopefully so. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Alfredo.
Thank you all. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you. There you go. So that was Alfredo, guys.